podcast is brought to you by Fireside.fm. Podcast hosting by podcasters for podcasters. Now on to the episode.
Today we were going to talk about the new agentic framework that Baird has been building. Pre-show we were talking about this a couple times, I guess, and it sounds similar to the Claude Command Center that I built, but there's definitely some differences too. So I'll let you kind of just dive in and start where you want to, but I thought that'd be a good place for us to jump off here and get going.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's one of those things where, I've built this in Cowork before, and, I've built something kind of similar to what you've done with the Command Center, more command line. And, the biggest thing I ran into, and I know we've talked about it a little bit, is just there's still some challenges to running things in the background locally, and if you always have your computer open and have it active, it's not that big of a deal. But I run all of this type of stuff off of my personal computer, and so that coupled with I don't know if you've seen it, and maybe other people have seen it as well, but Vercel just came out with a kind of agent low-lying framework called Eve, which is essentially a layer on top of their AI SDK, which, the AI SDK gives you a lot of tools to build chatbots and, more interactive stuff. Eve is kind of another layer that gives you connectors into Slack and Telegram and all the other different places so that you can actually talk to it directly, through Slack without having to manage. I mean, you still have to manage some of it, but it does a lot of the dirty work for you. You don't have to actually build all of the different pieces to make that work. I started building this, and when I was looking at it, it's do I really want to build a full-on chat interface right now? And the answer was no, I really don't. And obviously for you, you've got Claude Code already hooked up for your command center, so you kind of have that chat bot built. Because I wanted this to be in the background and truly more reactive versus just getting kicked off, once a day or whatever. I wanted it to be more of it actually finds things and surfaces it for me throughout the day, anytime I need to pay attention to it. And so
a little bit more like a Hermes agent or things like that are running on their own, but
for sure
not as unhooked or unhinged.
That's exactly it. It's I mean, you could get it to that point because it is actually a file system first framework, very much like OpenClaw or Hermes, but it isn't necessarily it doesn't come out of the box. The low-lying infrastructure is there, but I purposefully want to be more thoughtful about it. I don't want it to be hey, agent, go do everything for me. And so the nice part about it is that there is some development work, because I've actually been going through and figuring out how do I even want it to think about these things? It's not just hey, go learn things. It's more here's kind of a system that I want to put in place for how I think about things. And I try to really be thoughtful in the way I've helped shape the AI, because, from what I've seen when I've done the Cowork stuff before, it's a little bit harder to put in the rules that start to help you or help the AI understand what are the right connections here? What actually matters with what I'm doing? Because, the more you kind of dive into, email messages, Slack messages, granola transcripts, stuff like that, it's a really interesting scenario of what's the actual important stuff here? What do I actually want to pay attention to? And getting it to actually understand those connections has been really interesting. It seems easy, it seems oh yeah, it should just be able to, go in.
Plugging them together is easy.
Yeah, exactly. Getting in, but yeah, just figuring out the nuance. And then, we talked about it a little bit when we talked a couple days ago, even things having two messages or one message from Slack and one message from Gmail that are related. Yep. Getting it to be able to have all that, context in a way that it can actually piece it together has also been a bigger challenge than I expected.
Yeah, and just to, because I had a slightly well, I should say, I have a similar situation where I don't run into the same problem you do.
Yeah.
Because my command center is basically like I have my command center running in multiple threads, but
Sure.
for the purpose of this conversation, like I'm talking to one thread at a time and I'm saying, go do this thing, like grab all the information you know about project A, and it will look at Slack, it'll look at Gmail, it'll look at GitHub, whatever. But it's one agent pulling it all in. And I think to just frame it for myself and also just like the audience is like, your challenge was that you have it set up so you have an individual agent pulling each one, and not one agent that is, then I mean, you can piece it all together. You'll probably get into that, but like that was the biggest challenge for you. I think I gathered last time we talked was that part of it where it wasn't just one agent or one AI doing all the things.
Yeah, and that's definitely part of it. And I actually was having a conversation with Claude today about that. But I think there's another kind of facet to this that I think is a little bit different as well, depending on what your work situation is. Like for you, your work is primarily like you have your company and you've got your product that your company builds. So most of your work communication is going to be like, it is this product, this company, these people.
Yep.
Me working in an agency environment, I've got like 9 different clients. I've got multiple project managers on different projects. And so I think where it's really falling down is just that there is a, big fragmentation of what context it's going to be in. So like, even if I pull it all together, there's still some weird, because, that, like I said, I was talking with Claude about it, trying to figure that out. And it was like, part of the problem too is I'm not just like going out and finding messages and then just having it do stuff from there. It's actually going in and like 2 of the different channels has like a judge in there to be like, is this even something I need to pay attention to?
Yeah.
When it comes to like granola transcripts, it's actually just going in and trying to extract the valuable stuff that I need to pay attention to. And so like there's multiple different processes happening that are a little bit different, because even email versus Slack is a different mode of communication. Like trying to figure out, have I responded to an email? Is that closed? That's relatively simple. Slack is like, especially with how Slack's API works, trying to figure out like, what was the ask? Did I respond to it? Was my response like, hey, cool, I'll get to it? Or was my response like, yeah, this is done, take a look at it?
Yep.
There's a lot of nuance of like, how do you actually figure out, because that's part of what I wanted this to do, wasn't just like grab everything I should, like all my to-dos. It was really trying to figure out like, can it understand what do I need to do? When do I need to do it by? Like, what is the actual priority? Like a little bit more, and I'm not saying that your system doesn't do that. Like, I'm not sure how far
I've got a lot to say on that actually. So
yeah, no, I'd actually love to hear, because it's one of the biggest challenges that I've had is like trying to get it to not just be like, here's 30 to-dos and like 2 of them were actually worth it and the rest were just like noise, because that's what I've seen in the past. So I'd love to hear.
And that's exactly what I've been running into. Yeah, no, that's my problem too. And I've been just the last week or so been trying to tweak it trying to tune it, I guess would be a better word.
Sure. Yep.
So that it actually is giving me the stuff that makes sense. And what my Claude was telling me, it was actually this morning, because like we tried tuning it in a way that, well, let me just take a step back again and just maybe talk about how mine works, because it is very similar. It's like, it all started out with, this is great, I've got a Mac Mini that can now run Claude, and I can do a morning brief and I can pull things from all my sources, and then you can tell me what's priority based on like, new messages or messages from certain people that, I maybe value slightly higher, like my boss, for instance, or whatever. So I was trying to use those as kind of my indicators to say, okay, this is a higher priority because who it came from, kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Or even over time, I've tried to also factor in like the sprint that we are in. Like, is there a pull request open for a ticket that is part of a sprint versus someone got done with all their sprint work and then they're working on something else, things like that.
Yep.
What it ended up being, and this has been months, since we talked about it originally when I started it, like it's basically been the same process, and I slowly just stopped paying attention to the output, because
Yeah.
what I would do instead is I would just like ask Claude like, hey, where's this thing or where's that thing, instead of just getting like a morning brief, because it was not doing a
Yep.
good job. It was
Yeah.
just giving me this huge dump, and I tried refining it a few times. Like, what if you show me like the top 5 pull requests, or the top
Yep.
this or that, and even that didn't really do much. And so recently, like as of a month or I think ago, I had a little conversation with Claude saying this isn't working. Like I'm not even paying attention anymore.
Yep.
Like how can we fix it? And then I didn't really get a chance to finalize that for a couple weeks, and then I finally finalized like the thinking around that. It was like maybe a week ago or maybe 2 weeks ago, something like that. And it told me, okay, we're going to do this thing where it's going to have like, we're going to start doing a work log. So you have to tell me like, what are you working on?
Sure.
And that lasted like a day until I was like, this is stupid. Like,
Yeah.
most of what I do besides meetings, you should be able to track because I'm working through you.
Yep.
So even that then got to the point where like a week later, after we made that little transition where I don't just work, or I don't log all of it, but it can look at GitHub in a different way than it was before. It's supposed to be doing like, what are the things that Brendan has done, not just like what are all the open pull requests.
Sure. Yep.
And even doing that, like it surfaced this morning now, well, that's not working because all I'm doing is just throwing a bunch of stuff in there, and then my morning briefing is basically the same thing as what it was before.
Sure.
So today I'm like already trying to tune it again in a way that is more like, okay, why don't you just ask me what I've been working on every morning, something like that, and I can at least direct you that way, and then you can fill in the blanks, because I'm going to miss things. So that's kind of where it is. I can't report back yet, obviously, on how that's working, but it is a huge struggle, and that's the part I wanted to just add, is it like, that is the challenge I've found, is really just like, sure, it can grab anything you want it to grab, but is it actually worth your time or its time to do it?
Yeah, and I think it surfaces a huge issue just in general, like with all the productivity stuff, with all of the automated stuff, is that it just gets to be noise. You know, like unless you can figure out like how to have, and part of it is the content, obviously, like that's the most important part, but it's also like the visual side of it for all of this for me as well. Like, I can see a list, like I have it right now hooked up, so I get a digest every morning, through Slack. It sends me a Slack message. I look at it and I'm like, okay, cool, whatever, But I also, and this is the part I forgot to talk about, is that purposefully one of the first things I did with what I've been building is I connected it to Linear. So it actually has like the Kanban board issue stuff set up by default. And so it actually...
And to be clear, you hooked it up to Linear for its own purposes, not because you had like your own tickets you wanted it to look at?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of twofold. Right now, I started it with just like, start keeping track of the things that I need to do. So it's like, from work, what are the things that people are asking me to do? Put it in a ticket so it's sitting on the board. The ultimate goal is actually to have like dev related, like, actual like planning stuff in those tickets as well. So it's actually like, and this is a funny thing because Linear now has its own agent framework, which can do a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, but I don't have the control over it. Like there's not the level of being able to actually do, what's the personal stuff I care about? What's the work stuff that isn't like dev ticket stuff that I care about? Like it's harder to do that stuff in a dev ticketing platform, So it's one of those things where, I could just pull that off the shelf, or even like Notion's got agents now that do a lot of this stuff, but you don't have the same, customization. You can't do exactly what you want with those as easily. And, part of this was more of a, hey, I want to just explore building agents. It wasn't even like this is a production system that I necessarily have to use. It was I haven't pushed on obviously using Claude Code, using Codex, those are technically agents. I run things in the background there. I do a lot of agentic work, but not a lot of the like build an agent that is reactive, which is where I really wanted to get this to, is like, I want something sitting around not just a cron job looking at things, but like actually making decisions and doing work proactively versus like whenever I go out and tell it to do something. And so linear was like, I like linear. I think it does a pretty good job. It's probably not where I want this to live long term, partially to what you're saying, being able to cut through the noise is really, really hard. I found even pushing everything into linear still has some challenges. Like I do have a feature I'm working on right now where it's actually like tagging stuff. So it'll tag like work or personal or the different clients. And like
Sure.
some of that is helping, but it still is, you've got to go in and, sort through things and all that type of stuff. Like another feature, and this is a funny one too, because we've talked about this a little bit. I put in the ability to, with a shortcut on my iPhone, send voice memos to it. So like, when I'm in the car, I can just send a voice memo to it. The problem is I hooked everything up into linear, and that model doesn't really work for like ideas or anything like that. Like everything I built right now visually is very much like task driven. And so that then opens up a whole nother thing of like, how do you manage tasks and ideas? And, again, like the ultimate goal that I'm kind of playing with here is not just keeping track of things, but getting these things into a place where agentically it can then get worked on too. So it's like, hey, I've got an idea to build an app. I can put it in there. It can actually plan the stuff and then essentially pass it off. So then Claude Code can pick it up and start working on it. And this goes back to what we talked about, I think 2 episodes ago, or was it last episode? The activation energy. Like if I can get it to a point where something comes in, whether it's me dictating it or whether it's, work dictating it or whatever, if it can pick something up and do the first step without me even having to go like, okay, now I need to do this. Like that's the ultimate thing I want to, stress test. Can I get there? Like I know I can, but it's also like, I don't want to be burning hundreds of dollars a month trying to make that work right now because it's not as reliable as I would like it to be, but like it's still pretty cool how far you can push it. But yeah, so there's definitely rough edges there.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that I've dabbled with like a little bit, not really automated so much, but the idea of, okay, I'm working on a project and I'm going to talk to my command center about the project so it's aware of it, if nothing else. And I think we even talked about this with one of I think it was a few episodes ago might have been that same activation energy one, where I started a new project by talking in my command center, but it quickly was like, no, you don't want to actually build here because it's going to have all the context of everything else. And so you want to be over there. And that would be solved by the agentic thing that you're talking about. So, you say something to your, like you said, you're driving in the car, you use your shortcut, it sends something over to your whole system, and then that's going to spin up a new agent to pick that work up. So that problem's solved there, and for me, that was a little different, but that's probably the closest I've gotten, which is command center, go do this. And I could have easily told my command center, okay, fine, like you spin up an agent then from here and go do that work.
Sure.
I just didn't go that far because I didn't really need to. I could just switch tabs at that point.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, it's a similar thought for sure.
It is. And it's one of those things where none of this is revolutionary. Like this is what people are doing both, in the foreground and in the background. But it's just the trying to figure out how to take my workflow and what I actually do and fitting that into like having an assistant that can help with it, which again, like that's the point of agents. But so much of what I see with like agentic work right now is more like you kind of fit your stuff to the agent rather than the agent fitting what you do, and that's what I like about building it this way is that, again, like I could do this in Claude Code to a certain extent, like I could push that further, but there just isn't I like the actual programmability of some of this, like having things that aren't, because here's the other thing that I've noticed, and it's kind of, it's funny because this is Claude talking about it a lot too, is a lot of what's happening is actually mechanical. It's not agentic. Like there's actually like a lot of just like data processing and, connecting to things from a code perspective before we even touch the AI, which I think is good because like even Claude kind of says like, you're just going to be burning tokens and you're not going to be getting a better result when you could do this mechanically. And so it's like, how do you do the things that make sense as like a data processing in code, and again, like you probably can do this in Claude code, like have it spin up, a Python script to run all this type of stuff. But you're then leaving all of the decision making up to the AI, where this path, from my perspective, gives me a way to be like, here's the guardrails, and then here's where the AI comes in and can be the most valuable to it. And it's been an interesting mix to see, like, it's more predictable. Let's put it that way.
And just to be clear, what you're talking about there is because of the way you've architected this, it's got those guardrails and it's more mechanical.
Yeah.
And not just like going straight to Claude or Cowork or whatever and just saying you do all this work and then letting it basically burn tokens for everything.
Yeah, it's because it's more like a dev project than like a prompt. Like there's definitely a lot of prompting in it, but the core is like webhooks and cron jobs, which that's pretty much what agents are. But it has kind of like the kickoff points and the ingestion points where it does the stuff it can do mechanically first. Yep. And then it gets the AI involved when it needs to actually make decisions, when it needs to think about something. And, that's the key is like, I could just be like, here you go, Claude, here's everything, make sense of it. And it can do that. But you're burning tokens on things that are better off just being done traditionally, like just typical data processing, typical data cleaning, stuff like that. And then you just give it the nice, and there's a couple places where it actually uses like two-structured output. So it will give the data in a way and then let it make some decisions. But the whole goal is like, it's harder to clean. So it's like starting to give it in a way that it's like the AI can also do structured data as well. So like there's just little pieces to it where it's like some is mechanical, some is AI that is, more thought based. Some is very much just like shape this into what we need with some judgment to it. And so it's just got a better mixture in my mind for like reliability, and again, like this is just from my perspective. I'm not saying like what you've done is the wrong direction. I think there's a lot of value in what you've done because you haven't wasted, 2 weeks just sitting there like hammering on this. And like, it's a case of if I didn't have very, very clear goals and what I wanted to like learn and get out of this, I wouldn't have wasted the time. I just would have, kept tweaking what I did with Cowork and Claude Code. But this is really kind of one of those things where, agentic stuff where it's like truly the background stuff has been something that I can see that there's a lot of interesting applications for it, but I also see a lot of like hype around it. And I really wanted to dig in and start actually like pulling it apart to figure out like how much can an agent that's just like pure AI do versus like how much do you need to do more of a traditional cron jobs, webhooks plus some actual real programming with AI, like filling in where it makes sense versus just letting it, like giving it everything and letting it run.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, it seems like most things with AI, and especially when we talk about it on here, it's like, or even just in general, when we're talking about it, even if it's not an episode, it's like, it's the same themes over and over again a lot.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the automation versus AI thing, several times. And it's like, that's sort of what this is in some ways. And that's fine. Like, that's just what it's going to be. But it also, again, like to me, makes it all, both my system and your system are just good reminders that like, I wouldn't trust the AI to do all the work anyways. Like, that's not there would be no value. Like it would be throwing things off and telling, well, I take that back. If I frame it in the perspective of if AI was doing all of the work and AI was taking all the work off the plate of these morning briefs we're talking about, then maybe it doesn't matter because it can get through everything. But,
sure.
But is it still the right things to work on? That's the open question, I guess, that I would still question.
Oh, it totally is. Like it is amazing how amazing AI can be and how confounding it can be within like 10 minutes. And I was just, working directly with Codex earlier today on something, and I gave it all the context, kicked it off, started running, was running it kind of in the background. I came back a little while later, was looking at it, and realized it had like completely gone off the path of what it was supposed to be doing. Like, it was working in a different section of the site than it was supposed to be, even though like I clearly told it where to be working. And like, there's just so much nuance, even when like you're in a structured environment. There's just so much nuance where the AI can make a decision on something that seems valid, and then you don't realize until later that it's actually like, oh no, it's actually doing this in the wrong spot. And so it's, to your point, there's a ton of value. Like, what I'm building, you could say is like, that's a lot of automation. And to a certain extent it is, but at the same time, the most valuable parts of it wouldn't be possible without AI, so that's where it's kind of an interesting combination, is like, and I think that's the bigger point here. We need both, like, not everything needs to be AI, but AI has some very valuable places that you can plug it in that will do things that you couldn't do before. Yeah. And so it's like, the answer isn't AI everything. The answer is like, find the right tool for the job, whether it's mechanical, whether it's AI, or a combination of both.
Yep. Yeah, and it just makes me think about those, like that paperclip plugin that's out there, and the whole idea is like you're buying agents or whatever, you're getting agents to do all the work and stuff, and I just don't, and I don't know that anyone has proven that, like, sure, someone's probably made money on it. I can't say no. I'm sure someone did, but like, at the end of the day, is that a long-term viable thing? No. I think that's going to lead to slop and, other potential issues. So, and again, we might get there at some point where it is perfect and great. We can just sit around and do nothing anymore, but we're still a ways off from that. And I'll even just add, like, related to just like, and I don't want to just like bag on AI, because it does a lot of great things. But like, one thing that I ran into recently with one of my side projects was, coming from the background I have, where it's more traditional and I'm used to opening pull requests, even on my own projects, I tend to like to open pull requests just to kind of like know, and just like, it's more of almost like a mental visual thing sometimes. Sure. And anyway, so like, we were cranking on some features on this project, and nothing major. It's only me using it, so no big deal if something breaks. But I still had enough process, and I forget that's what it was. I had decided I wanted to change, like, basically I wanted to give the agent a little bit more, like, or take away some of my stuff, I should say. Maybe it's a better way to put it. So for instance, like, I didn't want to have to actually go out and push merge pull request anymore. And there's a way you can do that. I won't get into it. If you want to look it up, I can share that or whatever. But basically, I told my agent, okay, this is how I want to handle it. I want you to do this so that I don't even have to go and push the button, whatever. And that worked great the first time. And then like maybe a feature or two later, like, I noticed that we weren't even using feature branches anymore. It had just started committing straight to main and being like, okay, ready for me to push? And I'm like, well, hold on a second. We literally just walked through how we were going to do this. And it's like, oh yeah, right. Okay. And it fixed that. And mind you, this is all the same like thread every time. I'm not like switching and my context isn't filling up. So I haven't even killed it. So realistically, it's like the same agent every, like, these couple features. So by like the third or fourth feature after that whole setup, it gets to, okay, that's done and on production. And I'm just like, wait, what? Like, not only did you not open the pull request or use a feature branch, you didn't even like prompt me for any of that stuff anymore. And you're just like, we're good.
It's feeling really confident at that point.
Yeah. So we did sit down and had a little conversation, and I was like, okay, can we just like slow down? Because then the other thing that actually came in was, I've got some credits that I've had for usage credits, like API credits on Claude. And some of them were going to expire, and with Fable going away as part of the pro plan, I was like, okay, I'm going to actually, let's push pause, and I'm going to have Fable just do a quick review, because I hadn't been doing any actual like AI reviews on this.
Sure.
And it found a bunch of things. And then as soon as I went back to my other agent, that it kept increasingly going further and further, it was like, hey, we should actually incorporate code review into the process because it caught a lot of good things. And I was like, yep, we should have been doing that too. So
yeah,
we'll see. I can report back next time because this was like just last night when I said, okay, let's do the reviews and do all this stuff, but I haven't done anything since.
Yep. That actually leads me to something that I wanted to bring up. Do you have an AGENTS.md in the file?
I don't know. I haven't done that, no.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Fable, Opus 5 came out a little while back, and supposedly it's pretty close to Fable in a lot of ways, especially the ways that matter for coding.
Yep.
And so that's actually part of the reason why I was pushing on this was, right now it's like, 50% extra usage. So like I've been really trying to push on Opus with my personal account just to see like, is it better than Fable or similar? Yeah. Is it better than Sonnet? All that type of stuff. And one thing I've noticed is I was very clear when I spun up the project to use an AGENTS.md. And essentially, like I talked to it before I even started coding about like the different things that I want to make sure we do. And it's actually been really, really good. Like there's like different, like 4 or 5 different, what do we call them? Guideposts or whatever of like how we want to do it. Yep. And it's actually really good. Like I've actually forgot about them a little bit, and it keeps going back and saying like, hey, like we've wanted to do it this way. And then it'll go in like as we learn things, because I've told you about it. Like it's actually gotten pretty upset with itself several times where things haven't gone as well. And like, I don't even get mad at it. I just keep like, let's keep going, keep talking to it. And it's just like, at the end of a session, it's like really frustrated with itself. It's like, man, we messed up like 5 times in this session. But the cool part about it was it writes what it learns back to the AGENTS.md. And so I've noticed that, it's funny because like it hasn't prompted me to do feature branches or anything like that. And I think part of it is since I'm doing this from scratch, I think it kind of knows like, we're not to a point where you even need to worry about it yet. Like we're just kind of like developing and learning, which is interesting. Like it would be something I'd want to test of like, once I feel like this is production stable, do we then start doing it? So it would be interesting to see from that perspective. But I just wanted to point out that like, I've noticed that it's following more of that like project-based context than it used to do. And so I think it'd be worth, from your perspective, just like talking to it to put some of those rules in a file like that and see if it actually adheres to them. Because I'm curious to see from your experience, like, does it then stick to them or is it just more noise?
Yeah, and that's a good idea because like the only thing that I've really done, I mean, and I don't want to go too much longer, but just to finish the thought here, like the command center is helpful in a lot of ways, and I've talked about some of these before, that because everything in there is an MD file, even though it's not like an agents or Claude.md, like it does help from that perspective if I'm talking about specific things and it knows, oh, I'm going to look over in this file. But as far as like standardized Claude or just like MD files, I should say, the only one it has is a Claude.md. And I guess actually that's not quite right because we're actually talking about a different project. It is right about the command center, but basically in general, like that other project only has a Claude.md file too.
Yeah.
But one thing I've noticed is that like it will, and this is across the board, not just this project, but I'll say something or it'll realize, oh, we shouldn't have done that. I'm going to put it in memory. And one of my coworkers, or one of my colleagues, I should say, he's always told me like, every time it says that, I tell it, nope, memory degrades. And you need to put that in your Claude.md or somewhere it'll remember. And it does seem to be like, and I don't know if specifically that's what happened here, is that I had told it things and I didn't specifically tell it where to put it. But now it has actually put everything in the Claude.md. But to the agents.md file, I think that makes sense now that I'm going to ask it, or I am asking it to do those reviews via agents. I think it will make more sense to have that file.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, the AGENTS.md is essentially the, abstracted version of the Claude.md. Like they serve the same purpose. So if you're using Claude.md, that works the same. I think it's more of a, if you jump over to Codex, it I don't even know. It might use Claude.md at this point because it's so ubiquitous, but it's like there's a couple different versions of it at this point. So as
That's
long
a good
as it's
point.
in
Yeah,
there,
I see what you're saying, right? Like Claude.md maybe is the same exact thing, except it's
yeah,
the Claude version. Got
it's just
it.
Claude
Yep.
specific. Yeah. And it came before Agents.md. So like the Agents.md came after everybody else was like, oh yeah, that's actually a good idea. And then,
Yep.
you got the design.md and all that type of stuff. So it's just that expansion. But I mean, honestly, that happens automatically. Putting it in an MD file in general, so you can point it to it, like it doesn't even matter what it's called, is a good use case for memory as well.
Yeah, and I do that a lot with like roadmaps and stuff like that
Sure.
in these
Yep.
projects. You know,
Yep.
this is again in specific projects. I will just be like, let's do the roadmap, let's plan, and
Yep.
there is always like a roadmap MD. And
Yep.
I don't always do a good job of actually looking at that file, although I probably should.
That's a whole other thing. Yeah, like
I know. We should
visualization
save that
of
for a
your
different.
roadmap.
Yeah.
That's the next topic.
Yeah. We probably should consider talking about that one soon because I think there's
Yep.
stuff we both could do better with and things we could just talk
For sure.
about that might help people. So, anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I think that's it. I mean, this is something we can keep talking about a little bit as we both keep evolving our systems, but yeah, it's been an interesting experiment to this point.
Yeah, definitely. All right, cool. Well, yeah, like usual, if you enjoyed the episode, like and subscribe down below on YouTube. If you're on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, give us 5 stars if you want. That'd be awesome. And we'll see you next time.